Eleanor was 70 years old. She was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer in the fall. The doctor told her 6 months to a year. She heard the first part clearly. She did not need to hear the rest. When she walked out of that office and into the parking lot, she already knew what she was going to do. She was not going to tell her children. Her daughter Susan lived in Chicago with her husband and 2 kids, and was always rushing. When Eleanor called, she could hear the background noise of a busy household. Her son David ran a small business in Cincinnati. He always said he was fine when she asked. He had been saying that since he was 19. Her youngest, Amy, had never married, lived alone in Columbus, and drove home to see Eleanor once a month without fail. The drive was 2 hours each way. She never missed it. All 3 had their own lives. Eleanor did not want her illness inside those lives, so she managed it alone. She decided against chemotherapy. The doctor recommended it, but Eleanor had thought it through quietly and said no. She wanted to use what time she had, not fight through the side effects of treatment for a few more weeks. She filled the pain prescriptions and took them as directed. She walked the neighborhood in spring when the redbud trees bloomed. She bought a watermelon in July and worked through it slowly over 2 weeks. Sitting on the back porch in the evenings, she talked to her neighbor over the fence about nothing important. She knew that summer was her last one, and she tried to let it be a summer anyway. She began writing letters in October. She started with Susan. She wrote 2 paragraphs and crossed them out. She started again. She crossed that out too. She knew what she wanted to say but could not find the door into it. She tried writing "I love you" and stopped. She had never said it easily out loud. Writing it felt wrong somehow. Like borrowing words she had not earned the right to. But she kept going back to the table. She wrote and revised and wrote again through cold October evenings, with a cup of tea going cold beside her. By November she had 3 letters finished. 1 for Susan, 1 for David, 1 for Amy. She sealed each one in a white envelope, wrote their names in her careful handwriting, and placed all 3 inside a larger envelope. On the outside she wrote, in plain letters, "Open this after I'm gone." She cried writing it. She sat for a minute, then kept going. She put the envelope at the back of her bedroom closet, behind the winter coats, where no one would find it by accident. Eleanor died in her sleep on a Tuesday night in January. There was no ambulance, no hospital room. She had gone quietly in her own bed. In the morning Amy called and got no answer. She drove the 2 hours with growing dread, letting herself in with her key. Eleanor was lying in bed with the covers pulled up. Amy thought she was sleeping. She said, "Mom." She put her hand on her mother's shoulder. Then she took her hand. It was cold. The funeral was 3 days. Susan and David came. The 3 of them moved through the days in their own ways. Susan organized everything and kept moving. David sat quietly near the back of the room at the funeral home, and stood when he needed to. Amy sat with her mother's photograph and looked at it for a long time. None of them had known Eleanor was sick. She had never said a word. She had always said she was fine. After the service they went through Eleanor's house together. David was going through the bedroom closet when he reached the back and found the large envelope tucked behind the coats. He brought it to the kitchen table without speaking. The 3 of them stood around it. Susan read the outside. "Open this after I'm gone." No one moved for a moment. David said, quietly, "She planned ahead." Amy opened the envelope. 3 white envelopes inside. Susan, David, Amy. Each one of them picked up theirs. Susan opened hers first. 2 pages in Eleanor's handwriting, the letters slightly uneven, written on a day when her hands were not steady. Susan started reading and stopped halfway through the first page. She looked at the ceiling. She went back to the beginning. The letter said, "Susan, I kept a lot from you and I'm sorry for that. I didn't tell you I was sick. I didn't tell you when I was worried or when I was grateful. I was never good at that part. But Susan, I need you to know that I have been proud of you for as long as I can remember. I think of the time at your 3rd grade track day, when you finished last in the 50-yard dash and stood there absolutely bawling. I had to look away so you wouldn't see me laughing. You had run so hard. That was you. That has always been you. Last place and still leaving everything on the field. I have loved that about you since you were 8 years old. You found a good husband. You are raising good kids. That's everything. Susan pressed the letter against her chest and stood very still. David unfolded his. "Mom, I was too hard to reach and you let me be that way. And I think that was a mistake on both our parts. When you told me you were proud of me, I usually changed the subject. I know I did. I don't know why that was so difficult. When you asked me how the business was going, and I said fine, you let me say fine. And I think you knew it wasn't fine, and I think you carried that worry alone. You carried a lot of things alone. I watched you do it my whole life and I never said anything about it. I want to say now that I saw it. I saw everything you did without making a sound. That is an extraordinary way to love someone." David held the letter for a long time without putting it down. Amy's envelope held 3 pages. She noticed immediately that hers was longest. Her hands were shaking slightly when she unfolded them. The letter began, "Amy, I owe you an apology and I want to give it to you first. I was unkind to you for a long time about not getting married. I said things that were wrong. I talked about it like there was something that needed to be fixed. There was nothing to fix. I was scared. I was scared you would end up lonely. And I was probably scared of losing you to a life that didn't have much room for me. That fear was mine to carry, not yours. I should not have made you carry it too. I am sorry." Amy stopped reading. She pressed her lips together and kept going. "I need you to know something about those drives home. Every month, 2 hours each way. You never missed a single one. I know that cost you something. I know you rearranged your weekends and your plans and your rest to come see me. And when you got here, I mostly just made you dinner and watched television and said good night. I was never good at saying what things meant to me. But Amy, those evenings were everything. I started looking forward to them days before you came. I would hear your car in the driveway. And something in me would relax that had been tight all week. I never told you that. I should have told you that every single time." The last page had a few lines that were for all 3 of them. "I want each of you to know that you were the best thing I ever did. Not the only thing, but the best. Thank you for being mine." Amy couldn't put the letter down. She stood holding it with both hands while her shoulders shook. Susan came and put an arm around her. David moved from where he was standing and joined them. The 3 of them stayed that way in their mother's kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet. Light was coming through the window above the sink. Later Susan said, "Why didn't she tell us she was sick?" David said, "We could have come." Amy said nothing. She thought she understood why Eleanor hadn't told them. She didn't want to cost them anything. She had spent her whole life trying not to cost them anything. Eleanor had known since fall. She had driven herself to every appointment. She had made her decisions alone. She had written her letters alone and sealed them and put them away and waited. She had done it all the way she had done everything, without making a sound. Each of them took their letter home. Susan keeps hers in the drawer beside her bed. David keeps his folded in his wallet. Amy carries hers in her bag and reads it sometimes when things are hard. Those evenings were everything. I never told you that. That one sentence is what Amy carries. It tells her that the quiet, ordinary things she gave her mother landed. That showing up counted. That love does not have to be announced to be received. Spring came. The redbud trees Eleanor had walked past every April are blooming again. Amy drove past them on the way home from work. Same trees, same pale pink. No phone call this time. But the letter was in her bag. The 3 pages. The last one that said thank you for being mine. If this story reached you, please subscribe. There are more lives like this one, quietly and completely loving. We will keep telling them. Thank you for listening all the way through.